Hi everyone, so the Department of Education has released their long-awaited statement regarding the consultation between themselves and Ofqual into how grades will be awarded this summer. In this video, I'll be looking at how the report affects GCSE and A-level students and private candidates also. The press release announced today is quite short, however I assume more details will be provided later for key points that need addressing. However, the announcement does go some way in providing some sort of clarity on the main issues for most educational establishments and students in the UK. Straight away in the first paragraph, the Education Secretary Gavin Williamson points out that students will receive grades awarded and determined by teachers, with pupils only assessed on what they've been taught. This is important to note as some of you in the comment sections have had tests or mock exams which contain questions on topics that you haven't been taught in. To repeat, teachers shouldn't be setting you questions in tests that you haven't been taught. If this scenario happens in the future, then I would mention it to your teacher in a respectful manner that doing this goes against the policy of the government. The third paragraph goes into how grades will be assessed. Teachers will be able to draw on a range of evidence when determining grades, including the optional use of questions provided by exam boards, as well as mock exams, coursework or other work completed as part of a pupil's course, such as essays or in-class tests. No algorithm will be used. This section has caused the most concern from various commentators. From this announcement, it seems that each educational establishment will be able to use a range of evidence to determine their students' grades as outlined. However, this will cause some problems. What if each school decided on a different proportion of mock, exam, homework, coursework and tests? How will you compare each different school if there isn't a standardised approach to grading? More importantly, how do schools and colleges judge the grading comparative to what they award this year to what they awarded last year? In this video, I went through the huge grade inflation that occurred last year in the summer of 2020. It seems to me that this will potentially lead to even greater grade inflation this year if education establishments aren't careful on their approach to assessing grades. However, later in the statement, Gavin Williamson does say that there will be more support for teachers late in the spring of 2021 on how to make judgments on the awarding of grades. He also mentions that schools, colleges and other educational settings will conduct multiple checks, such as checking consistency of judgments across teachers and that the correct processes were followed to ensure as much fairness as possible. At the same time, exam boards will conduct their own checks through a combination of random sampling and more targeted scrutiny where they identify cause for concern. Will this system be robust enough to ensure that not only there will be less grade inflation this year, but also that every student gets the grade they deserve? We'll have to wait for more information on what checks will occur. Although just from that small snippet, exam boards may check schools or colleges if they feel the need to do so. However, I do think most of them won't be diverting much from what they awarded last year for fear of a compliance check from exam boards. The statement goes on to mention that all students will also be able to appeal their grades. This is a good thing. However, what will happen if a significant number of the student population do want to appeal their grades? What sort of work will be required in the month of August by teachers whilst they're away on summer holidays? Will teachers be required to come back to school or college to process the many possible appeals? I think further clarification will be provided by the Education Secretary at some point in spring. So on to the subject of private candidates, because I know a lot of you who are watching my channel and hopefully subscribed will want to know more information about this. So the statement says there will also be a clear and accessible route for private candidates to work with a centre to receive a grade this year at the same time as other candidates. Exam boards will provide centres with clear guidance on the evidence they can use to assess a private candidate. A list of available centres will be published shortly, and we are working with the sector to ensure there are sufficient centres available and at a similar cost to a normal year. Judging from this statement, I'll assume that there will be some sort of exams in summer or autumn of 2021 for private students to sit. However, will these exams be the full ones that students were supposed to sit this summer? It would be strange and unfair if private candidates were to sit the full diet when their student peers won't have that requirement, and they're also being assessed in a completely different way. There must be a balanced approach to the possible exams for private candidates and how grades will be awarded. Again, I imagine more information will come later in the spring. That sums up the statement for what I feel is the most important for students in the UK at the moment. However, my main concern will be over the possible grade inflation again this year. Last year, there was a huge leap in grades awarded across all subjects. This year, with schools and colleges being able to choose how their students will be assessed, and the possibility of these schools wanting to avoid appeals from their students, will this lead to possible grade inflation again this year? How will the possible pronounced grade inflation of 2021 look to schools, colleges, universities and employers? Will grades have any less value this year? I think it's important to acknowledge that the Education Secretary does say that he wants a fair and flexible approach so students can advance to the next stage of their lives. However, at what cost does this come if there is pronounced grade inflation again this year? In my opinion, I think grades will be similar to the results of last year, maybe even a slight increase. If grades were significantly lower, then people would cry foul and there would be a public outcry which schools, colleges and the government would want to avoid. Conversely, if there's significant grade inflation, then sections of the media and commentators will just say that the class of 2021 grades will bear no significant value due to the ease of how they were awarded. Whatever the case, we'll just have to wait for more information now from your school and college on how they will award your grades. Perhaps your final grade will be awarded on a number of factors like 50% on your mock exam results, 25% on your homework, 15% on end of term homework, and perhaps 10% on teacher judgment. Whatever method they use, it will be particular to that educational establishment and not standardised across the country. Let me know in the comment section what you think and how you would like to be assessed. Has your school or college told you the assessment criteria? It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on the subject and on the recent announcement. So wherever you are in the world, continue to study hard, stay safe, and I'll speak to you soon.